Hey everybody, what is going on? It is Rob from Crypto Bobby, and today I want to talk to you about a couple different things. Do a little bit of a market recap, see where things are heading in the marketplace right now, but also want to talk about an article that was out in Bloomberg.com today that is a pretty large, I would say, profile of Roger Ver, and goes to talk quite a bit about Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, and then Bitcoin SegWit 2x, and a lot of the kind of issues around SegWit 2x, some of the contention beyond SegWit 2x, and kind of why there's some issues there. So that's what I was hoping to cover in this video today. Now, if you are new here, daily recorded videos on the subject of cryptocurrency and the markets in general. So hit the subscribe button if you are new here, and if you've been here for a while, definitely appreciate a like to help get this content out. So before we get into the market itself, Bloomberg.com had a pretty big featured article today in terms of Bloomberg technology on Bitcoin and whether or not it is likely to split again in November. And this is something that I would consider to be a pretty fluid and developing situation. So I think a lot of the comments around here can change, but it's a really interesting article, and I'll link to it in the description. I'll put a comment as well and link to that there as well. But one of the big things here that I think is interesting when you do read this is mostly this interview is around Roger Ver, who was one of the, I would say, kind of one of the big players initially in Bitcoin back in 2012, 2013. He was a very large evangelist of Bitcoin, and now he's really put a lot of his resources behind Bitcoin Cash. So whether or not you are, I know there's a lot of contention in the Bitcoin community in general between Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency community between Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. Roger Ver is definitely on the side of Bitcoin Cash. And I don't know in this case if he might be trying to spread a little bit of FUD or trying to kind of push the Bitcoin and Bitcoin SegWit potential contentious hard fork together so we could basically just get even more Bitcoin Cash. But that's pretty much what he's said in this article. So to summarize things right now, there is the original Bitcoin core fork, and this is going to be a very just high level summary. There's the initial Bitcoin core fork. Bitcoin Cash was forked off of the Bitcoin chain back in August, around August 1st, I believe, and now there's Bitcoin, there's Bitcoin Cash, or as a lot of people like to call it, Bcash, and a while ago, I don't remember the exact date, but a while ago, there was an agreement between a number of, let's say, high-profile people within the Bitcoin community where they came together on what was referred to as the New York Agreement, in which they decided that they were going to run a specific set of protocols and software on Bitcoin called SegWit 2x. Now, SegWit has been implemented, segregated witness has been has been integrated into a lot of the wallets, and a lot of companies have integrated SegWit, but now the big kind of bone to pick is does Bitcoin actually need to double the 2x refers to doubling the block size. Does Bitcoin actually need to double the block size, or is everything for the most part fine as of right now? And that's kind of the big point of contention. And if you go on Twitter, you can see people with 2x in their Twitter handle. You can see people with a lot of people, at least just from what I've seen, a lot of people, it looks like on Twitter, just from the user perspective, have the no 2x logo or the no 2x kind of line within their username. So there's a lot of contention around what this debate is and whether or not SegWit 2x should be implemented or 2x should be implemented. And Roger Ver, and I think a lot of people are, he basically says he would prefer the split to happen, because if the split happens, then he's going to keep his original Bitcoin. He's going to get Bitcoin SegWit 2x, and then he's going to take both of those and basically buy more Bitcoin Cash with it. It's an interesting thing. The one I'm trying to formulate, quite frankly, I don't really know how to play this right now. If I'm looking at this right now, I don't know how to. There's still a little bit of time. I think there's going to be uncertainty. A lot of this is going down. A lot of these issues are going down in November. But I'm trying to formalize. I'm trying to kind of come up with a strategy of how to play this and how to think about what is going on here. And as soon as if you guys have strategies around that, if you guys have thought processes around that, I'd really be interested in hearing what you have to say in regards to how you're going to play Bitcoin potentially breaking into Bitcoin Core and then Bitcoin SegWit 2x, if that's something that you plan on doing. So then we would essentially have Bitcoin Bcash or Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin SegWit 2x. So we basically have 3 separate chains of Bitcoin. So if you have some thoughts on how you're going to play that, I think this is, like I said, this is, in my opinion, going to be a very fluid situation. There's going to be a lot of contention there. There's going to be a lot of negative feedback on both sides. I think people that are pro SegWit 2x component or proponents, people that are very anti SegWit 2x. So we'll see what happens there. But I think it's interesting to keep an eye on, and it's going to continue, in my opinion, to dominate the headlines. But you also, in my opinion, you have to keep, when you see articles like this on somebody like, from somebody like Roger, he has a number of vested interests within the space. Whether that is making Bitcoin Cash the new Bitcoin, making Bcash the new Bitcoin, and trying to overtake Bitcoin, whether he just has a lot of money in a certain thing or one is better than for his business. Everybody has their own kind of internal drivers. Everybody has something that is making them do something. So try to understand that, and you have to take everything with a grain of salt. Take what I say with a grain of salt. Take what Roger says with a grain of salt. Take what a core developer says with a grain of salt. Just kind of try to understand things as best as possible, but don't take everybody's word as kind of ironclad by any stretch. Now, outside of that as well, just looking at the markets here in the past 24 hours, it's been, I would say, somewhat uneasy a little bit in the marketplace right now. Bitcoin has been hovering around a little bit below, around 4,000, a little bit below 4,000 and the 3,900 range. Ethereum has been kind of pushed up against 300, really hasn't been able to get back above 300, so it's now down below 285 at least as of right now. Bitcoin Cash has had a little bit of a run based off of, I think, a conference that they had in China and some things that were going on in China. But for the most part, it's been mostly red in the past 24 hours for the majority of coins, with a couple different exceptions like Bitcoin Cash, like Dash, even things like OMG, Omise Go, down about 7.5%. But the vast majority, I would say a good, probably 65% of crypto has been down in the past day. So, what I'm looking at now is from an uncertainty perspective. I think that there is a little bit of uncertainty in the market in general right now. So I don't know if a large sell-off is going to be taking place anytime soon. But with that being said, I don't know if a large sell-off is going to be taking place anytime soon. But I'm looking at potentially scooping some things up, specifically Bitcoin, specifically Ethereum, if things tend to dip down, if it's 5% low or whatever it might be based off of uncertainty. So for me right now, I think there seems to be a little bit of uneasiness in the markets, and I don't think a lot of people have any clue if something's going. Sometimes you can kind of definitively say, and you can't always definitively say, but sometimes you can look at the charts and be like, all right, we're in a bull market, we're crushing it, we're killing it. You put your money in, you're basically not going to lose money. Or alternatively, like last week with all the China news, it's like this is probably going down. Everybody's freaking out. We're going to continue this. It's not a question of are we going down? It's a question of how far we're going down. Right now, we've kind of stabled off a little bit. If I pull this out here, so we've kind of stabled, have a little bit of stabilization here. But I think the question right now is, in a lot of respects, if we're looking at these Bitcoin charts, is are we going to be heading? We were kind of up at that 5,000 range, and we had this slow, or not really slow, pretty fast, steady move all the way down to 3,000, and then have popped back up to around 4,000. But is this just part of a general downward trend right here, where we can kind of see this line go down and down and back down to 3,000 or so? Or are we just picking up steam right here and kind of brushing off this China news and telling Chinese regulation to go? So that's kind of what I'm trying to formulate, and I think I'm reducing a little bit of exposure here and trying to let the markets kind of figure themselves out and try to limit my exposure to some of the potential what I deem negative moves might be. So we'll see how that happens and kind of what goes into that, to that equation as of now. Now, outside of that too, I would definitely look, one of the big things, and I talked about it yesterday as well, but from Ethereum's perspective, I think Ethereum, when we're looking at how things could potentially move forward here, Ethereum is something that is really, it's interesting to me coming up in the near future of how these test these tests that they're running with Metropolis, with Raiden, with some of these other kind of components of these technical scaling advancements, how they are able to run on the testnet. I'm not sure if you guys saw, and I could link another description here, but Ethereum just rolled out, I believe, the first ever ZK Snarks transaction on the Ethereum network. So built-in potential privacy with the Ethereum network with ZK Snarks. Granted, that was one test, and that was one test transaction, and I believe there was like over a million gas fee. So it was not a cheap transaction, not a cheap test by any stretch. But if Ethereum can implement ZK Snarks and have an element of privacy added within Ethereum, that could actually reduce the need for a lot of these privacy coins. And you could see Ethereum not only being the designated cryptocurrency for ICOs, for decentralized applications, whatever it might be. You could also see Ethereum potentially having a greater impact within the privacy coin space as well, and not necessarily replacing all privacy coins, but potentially taking market share and taking market cap from some of them. So that's an interesting thing to keep an eye on as well. Of Ethereum has a lot going for it right now, or a lot of kind of changes happening. How that works, what happens there, we'll keep an eye on that, and I would certainly keep an eye on that as well. Now, outside of that, guys, I think for right now today, there's you can kind of see it within you can basically see it with your own eyes, but there's a lot of uncertainty, I would say, within the past. We've had a little bit of sideways movement for the past 2 days, so I would keep an eye on if we have any type of specific breakout. I'm hesitant to say one way or another if we're going to break upwards or if we're going to kind of head back down. I'm almost leaning towards part of me thinks that we might be headed back down. I think there's a little bit of I'm just kind of getting a feel for a little bit of downward pressure in terms of the marketplace. I think there's only one negative piece of news needs to come out for a little bit of downward pressure here. But I'm keeping an eye on things and trying to come to a good determination. If you guys have any thoughts, if you guys have any technical analysis on where things might be headed, be happy to hear that as well. Definitely sound off in the comments so I can get a feel for that and just kind of get a good polling on the community as well. But outside of that, guys, keep an eye on how things are going. Definitely keep an eye on the Bitcoin. Definitely keep an eye on the Bitcoin kind of split and what could potentially happen there. As I said, it's a fluid situation. Twitter is kind of an interesting place to get a feel for exactly what's going to happen, how things are going to move. But outside of that, it's going to be contentious. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be political. We'll see how it goes. Thank you so much for your time today. I hope you found this video helpful. I hope you found this video enjoyable. And again, if you are new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. That would be fantastic. Rob from Crypto Bobby, thank you so much for your time. Have a good one. Peace.